Mm. I mean, that's the theme I came across in, there's a great book by Isabel Harding. I think I've got it over here.
Yeah,
Isabel Hardman. Sorry, apologies, Isabel. It's called the Why We Get the Wrong Politicians. And
yeah,
it's one of the first books that I had ever read on the British political system that was really actually exploring the reasons for getting the people we get. Because I know
mm,
I've lamented, and I'm not alone, definitely. The sheer like seeming incompetence of the people that we have in power, and the system's ability to solve the problems that we have today, in the 21st century. I mean, I literally this morning was writing an intro for the first chapter of my second book, so that's going to be fun.
mm,
But the first chapter is basically, it's called Invisible Threats, and it's like just going through, like, starting with COVID, because that's the main theme of the book, and
mm.
what happened with it. But climate change, pollution, information and cyber warfare, the financialization of our economy, censorship, and social media, and
Brilliant.
all of these things are problems that, it's not like we don't know they're a problem.
Mm,
It's that we simply don't know, like, our system is just struggling to deal with them. Even just if you look at the report that was put out on social media's influence on the Brexit vote, and the report by the DCMS committee, and they
mm.
were just saying, look, our electoral commission needs more power to deal with
Yeah,
this, and
yeah,
yet nothing has been done. It's 4 years since the vote. We
yeah,
still have the exact same problems, and we're not moving forward with it. And
yeah.
it was actually quite refreshing for me to come across first this book, and then yourself and your podcast, where you're trying to understand, like, the actual system that gives us the results that we get,
Yeah.
rather than the people who are attempting to grapple with the system itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the example I always use, if you take gender balance in the House of Commons, but anywhere, you go over to Switzerland, and they have a very different system of governing there, and the power is decentralized to what's called the cantons, which are the local government. Geneva is the biggest at 500,000 people. The smallest is 28,000. They then operate through high levels of decentralization. In fact, the constitution says, the federation, which is what it is, would only do those things which can't be done locally. You then find at the federal level, who's the prime minister or president of Switzerland? No one knows, because there isn't one. They have a president of the council who is only president for a year. The ruling council is always a coalition, and that job rotates. My word, what do you find? On balance, there's always equal, or indeed even more, women in their federal council on average. And it's because of the system and the way in which people can come through that system. You take the constitutions that are around, and of course, I mean, the UK constitution is sort of almost disappeared to nothing, other than that which the judges tell a government it can't do. But you take a constitution like the US constitution, well, I mean, that was developed in 200 years ago. So here's a piece of technology that we're trying to run the modern world with, which is 200 years ago. Well, I mean, if you went into a hospital and said, fine, I'm okay, I've got problems with my brain, I'm very happy, please apply what you were doing 200 years ago in order to cure me, you'd say, you must be mad, mate. Well, that's precisely what we do with our constitution. So you take your point, which is absolutely spot on about the Electoral Commission. Well, unless that is put into a constitution, and a constitution is, if you like, a meta law that sits above the politicians, the political parties, and all the rest of it, and can only be changed by essentially the population saying, yeah, these are the rules of the game that apply to you down there who are meant to be serving us. So unless that electoral commission requirement goes into the constitution, the politicians will fiddle with it. It's like, if you take a game of football, which has some very well developed rules that make it the game it is. Well, the way politics and government works in Britain is that once a team is winning, they can change the rules. So there you are, you're Manchester United against Arsenal, you score a goal, Alex Ferguson pops up and works out that actually they've got some super whizzy fast forwards, so we're going to adapt the offside rule to negate their influence. And that's actually what happens precisely when you don't have a constitution which sets the rule book for the politicians and the government.
Mm. No, I want to get to your discussion about how we need a constitution. You're not the only person that's talked to me about this, but I want to start with so you're a systems thinker, and we are essentially proposing here that the British system of government is broken.
Yeah.
So, like, what analysis would you use to on any system you were trying to look at or assess or analyze? Like, what markers do you look for to say that a system is broken? Like, what are like the fundamental like red flags that come up and where you say, okay, we need to fix this?
Yeah, the biggest one is feedback. Okay, so any organization and a company, indeed a local voluntary organization, anything has to have feedback on the results or outcomes of what it's done. You take a company and you say, okay, just carry on. You don't need profit and loss statements. You don't need to know where your sales are. You don't need to know what products, how well received they are by the customers. You just carry on. Well, pretty soon you'll go bust. And it's a truism across organizations. You need feedback. Look at government. There we are. Brum. Here's a law. They all get terribly excited. They passed a law. Worth saying at that point, what is a law? Well, a law is words on a piece of paper. It has absolutely no worth until it's put into action, into effect. Now, we bung these laws out. There have been 3,500 new laws on top of all the other ones in the reign of the current Queen. So there's piles of laws, even more piles of regulations, piles of policies, piles of statutes, piles of new organizations. Are they working? And actually, we don't know. So the laws accumulate, and some of them do work, a lot of them don't work. Well, if you don't know where you are or where you're going or whether you're getting there, then it's inevitable that you'll end up with what we get. So what happens in the absence of feedback? And there's another point of feedback I'll come on in a minute. In the absence of feedback, you get politicians rhetorically massaging statistics, spinning, briefing to prove that it's all fine. And that's that particular piece of infrastructure. Of course, you can't leave to the politicians. You have to take it outside the political arena. So you've got some independent, comprehensive sense of whether these things are happening. Now, the other point about feedback is that, okay, you get some feedback and it says, yeah, the law's not working, to take a simple example, and you need something to happen. You take a thermostat on the wall, okay, you set it to 20. When it goes over the 20, it goes click and it turns the boiler off. When it goes below 20, it goes click and it turns the boiler on. And you need the same thing in government. So there is a power called abandonment, which was the phrase that Peter Drucker used in 1969 You need a power of abandonment that says, right, it may be very well intentioned, it may be important, but it's not working. Click, we've turned it off. That's the first one, is feedback. The second big one is what we call the citizen branch. So you have representative democracy, which has become, in effect, vote and go away. So lots of interest on the citizens and the voters coming up to the election, a sort of bit just after the election. Otherwise, we're not here. So we need what's called the citizen branch, which is about participative and deliberative democracy in between times, particularly for really difficult issues. A really difficult issue is called abortion. The Irish government, the politicians were really afraid of touching this, but because they've got some history of using citizens' assemblies and engagement to address, really, which started off in times of the Good Friday Agreement, to address those issues, and they got very practiced at doing it. They did it really, really well. Meantime, here we are with Brexit, and we'll have a referendum. And it's a free-for-all. And it's sort of people piling in every direction with all sorts of mud, fake news, and God knows what. We don't need that. We do need what Ireland did. So you've got the citizen branch. The third area, I mean, there are others, but the third area that I really put my finger on is what I call preferential lobbying. So this is whereby, I mean, typically it can be all sorts of big organizations, but typically the wealthy, big business, big industry lobby like mad. It wasn't always thus. And indeed, it's not natural or the way things need to happen. There are all sorts of reasons why preferential lobbying excludes the citizen, excludes us from any seat at the decision table. And therefore, what you find is that in politics and in policy, decisions are skewed more and more and more to what industry and business want. What you find is that, of course, this is all about wealth appropriation. It's not about wealth creation, because a lobby will come in, they want a tax rate change, they want a regulation change, they want to prevent, I mean, a classic one was in the States, where a company called Intuit have a piece of software which helps people to fill in their tax returns. Tax returns in the US are formidably complicated, and you either need the software or you need an advisor, even if you're a relatively poor person. So Intuit has built this big business with this piece of software. In California, shock horror, they've got tax simplification going on. This is a scandal. What happens if this goes throughout the US? We're going to lose money. Pile in the lobbies, pile in the conversations with congressmen that say, oh, terribly interesting, Congressman, we're always out to, give donations to the right people, pausing conversation. Terribly interesting. We really think the tax simplification laws are all wrong for whatever reason. There is never any explicit deal, but each side understands. So the money piles over to the congressman votes against any tax simplification. Hey presto, Intuit keep this pile of money for themselves at the expense of citizens. And that, writ large, is an awful lot of what happens. Then you find, guess what? People feel, we have absolutely no power. What the hell are we going to do? Oh my God. Populism rises up, because, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to vote for one of these leaders who says, we need to drain the swamp. Well, yeah, we need to drain the swamp. So we have Trump and we have Johnson and Bolsonaro and et cetera. Not a solution, alas. But your point, Josh, that you're making there, that all of these detrimental things that we observe actually stem from that single cause of bust systems of government is absolutely spot on.
Thanks so much for listening. If you haven't already and you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast and to our mailing list. And don't forget, my book, Brexit, The Establishment Civil War, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. You'll find the link in the description below. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.